the space. It's, that was amazing. So and all of the words that Principal Clement said, I really, believe, because, in the just few minutes that we got to see you interact with your students, that is exactly what we saw. So, really appreciate everything you do. And, yeah, that was just a very special day. I know there was a couple other folks that mentioned then.
Yeah, social studies.
Yeah,
In this world, you're still a social studies.
so I can retire.
Means you should
Okay.
say that for you.
That's not a board decision.
I tried. Watching those young leaders when we were there was phenomenal. Here to tell you, young leaders lead because the current leaders fit and nurture them. And well done, good and faithful servant.
Thank you.
The thing I wanted to say is that you kept going on about how unique this place is, right?
Mhm.
And how unique it is to show up and to have that opportunity, whatever it is. It also takes unique people to be able to lead and to generate that type of response. So hopefully tonight is really a reflection back to you that everything you said is true, but it also requires someone like you in order to bring that out. So please stand tall on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I ditto everything that my colleagues have said. It was so fun to see you in action, and always great to hear from students. And they were professional and prepared and not nervous at all. Right, talking in front of a bunch of adults, right, that they don't know can be really intimidating, and they really were well practiced and confident in what they had to say, and were confident in what they wanted to do, and it was really inspiring. So thank you for that. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
All right, one more round of applause.
Right, thank you. So next, my privilege is to be able to introduce you to a student that's unable to be here this evening. However, he did do a video, so you'll have the opportunity to see that. This young man is a student in our 519 school program. He worked very, very hard to earn his diploma. So we get to see in this video the very day that he earned his diploma and some of that pridefulness that comes out in that. And Josh Matson is the teacher at the beginning. You'll hear a little bit from him as well.
Good morning. My name is Josh Matson. I am a teacher with District 287. I work at School 519, and I have the privilege to be with a very recent, as of 5 minutes ago, a high school graduate, Adrian Parker. Adrian, congratulations. How do you feel right now learning you have accomplished your goals to become a high school graduate? How do you feel?
First, I want to say thank you. I feel really, really wonderful. I feel good about myself. Getting my high school diploma, it just put a lot of more joy in me. I feel better about myself now, knowing that I had completed something that I always wanted to complete it, that I always thought I wasn't never going to complete. And this day, March 13th, the day had come. I have finished high school, and now I'm on my way to do better things in my life.
And what is your next step? What are you doing now that you have your high school diploma?
My next step is I already have recently enrolled in college, 2026, for fall classes. I am actually going to college for business management, construction, and in the real estate field and accounting to get my accounting certificate. I'm really in a mindset right now. Like I got bigger and better things to achieve right now. Like I gotta make up what I was been supposed to do. Now I gotta make it count. Now that I got the things and the people in my corner I can do what I want to do now.
Excellent. Excellent. Congratulations. Great job. You had the opportunity to write a little bit about yourself and about your story from where you've been to where you are today.
Mhm.
Would you be willing to kind of share your personal story if you want to pick up your piece of paper and just read that to everyone so they can hear how far you've come? Is that okay?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Go for it.
Okay. For My Life Plan by Adrian Parker. My high school experience started in 2020 when I was at Park Center High School. It was going well at the very beginning. I liked the school and everything was something that I enjoyed. I liked the people, the surroundings, and everything about it. Moving further into the high school years, I found myself not attending classes as much as I should because I was distracted by the others around me. This brought me down, and I felt that most teachers did not have the time to get me on the right track. My grades started to fall and I fell behind. However, some classes that I took at the time that were helpful were math and classes that taught life skills. I enjoyed these classes because they taught me skills that would help prepare me for the real world. I still think that these classes are important because they are skills that I will use for the rest of my life. After my time at Park Center, I went to North High School in Minneapolis and thought that I would be more successful there because I could get more help. Instead, what I experienced was too many distractions that took me off my education path. My granny, my mother, and my family members in our circle have all been important people to me on my journey in life. They have always wanted for me to be successful and have always expected more from me. They have wanted for me to have the best life that I can. When I have had struggles, they have tried the best that they can to get me on the right path. As my granny always told me, I want you to be a successful man. I thank them for that. I am now at the stage in my life where I know that I have opportunities and that I have lots of things in life ahead of me. The people who have tried to help me have special skills. I respect their wisdom as I know that they have done the hard work to get them where they are today. When I look at them, I see how far they have came and see that they have accomplished so much in life. I see that they want the same thing for me, and I am proud that I got back on the path to be successful. Now I need to take responsibility to complete what I started to become a successful person in life. I now need to get the things done that will help me and not worry as much about the things that I think I need for myself. I now realize that I need to surround myself with people who are successful and want the same for me. On February 25th, 2026, I enrolled at North Hennepin Community College. I am going to attend this school for business management and accounting. This is important not to me because I am preparing for my long-term goal of becoming an entrepreneur by getting my real estate license. Getting this education will mean that I have the ability to do what I want to do and something that will allow me to pass down my experience and wealth to another generation. I want to provide for them in a positive way because my hard work has paid off. Here I am in 2026. I'm getting my diploma. I am enrolled in college. I am preparing for my journey. I feel good that I have put myself in the position I am in. I feel better about myself in a way that I have not always felt. I thank my teacher, Josh, because he have always seen a positive side of me, and he has wanted for me to be successful from the moment he first met me. He had changed my life, and I thank him. But most of all, I thank my family for believing in me and for loving me who I am. Adrian Parker.
Absolutely fantastic. The showcase is on you. The spotlight is on you. We are so proud of you. We thank you for all of your hard work, and we wish you nothing but the best. Any final words before we sign off here?
I thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to be on the spotlight. I thank my teacher Josh for just being there, having given me this opportunity to even be right here in a position like this. Not just really just thank you guys.
Excellent job. Thank you.
There is nothing better than a graduate smile. Like when I saw his face light up, like, right? And this young man worked really hard to earn his diploma and has had challenges in his life. And I just want to thank the board because the site he's located at is a place that could slip through the cracks. And you guys support this program really well. And it's because of that and 287's dedication and our partnerships with our member districts that we're able to do this. And so just thank you. This kid getting his diploma changes his life trajectory. Thank you.
And please pass our thanks on to Josh.
Oh, for
That was
sure.
amazing.
Oh.
What he said at the end was like what we would normally say, but like 10 times better. So.
I will definitely do that. And just so you are aware too, we are planning his graduation. He asked us to do a graduation. We're planning on it the last week in June. So I think we believe he'll be able to attend at that time. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, our next item, you guys are welcome to stay, but you don't have to. If you'd like to get on tonight.
Yes.
Um,
I'll let you guys.
Our superintendent's report and superintendent out and the leadership team are gonna share the draft goals for the 2026-27 school year.
Yeah.
Request feedback from the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we have had our focus area work meeting throughout the school year to draft goals for next year. So we are already planning for next year. One of our commitments was that our principals and our staff leave knowing what the plan and the focus is for the next school year. The best part about the strategic plan is the staff that embrace the participation of drafting the goals. And it's their goals. They look at our data. How are we doing to date on our current goals? What would be the next step for either greater implementation, fidelity in implementation, or are we ready for the next new goal? And so Camille, our Director of Communications, has been facilitating the FOG groups, and she'll be here tonight with the team to facilitate the draft goals. There is no decision tonight. It really is information and then questions you may have to finalize the wording of the goals. Okay. All right.
All right, thank you. Well, good evening, Chair Casey, Superintendent Dowd, and members of the board. So tonight we're sharing the draft strategic plan goals for 2026-2027 school year. And these goals are really grounded in the voices of the 287 community, right? Including our students, staff, families, and caregivers. So we're going to start with our mission. And this is really the why. It grounds the work we do every single day and helps guide our decisions. At its core, our mission is to inspire every learner to thrive, not just academically, but socially and emotionally as well. It's our North Star, keeping us focused and aligned on what matters most, which is students' success. Our values and beliefs, they really guide how we do our work. So they shape our culture and the decisions we make every single day, from the people we hire to how we design our daily practices. In front of you, I have a copy, and you've had this copy before, but it's the themes, these 3 themes and those overarching themes. They are the three theme areas we have as like the umbrella of our yearly goals that we have shared with you in the past. These themes, again, they rose to the top after a lot of community engagement from staff, students, families, caregivers, and community partners back in 2023. And this really mirrors what many districts are doing. As you know, we built this plan with our community, not just for them. And so we were intentional about gathering meaningful input along the way. So what you're seeing here truly reflects the voices and priorities of the people that we serve. We love showing this picture. This is our focus area work group from this year. We've been very intentional and collaborative at every step of this work. Instead of working in silos, we've made sure to bring in staff and families throughout the process. Our focus area work group includes teachers, support staff, families, and whenever possible, students as well. I'm also really proud of how much this group has grown since 2024. Maybe next year we'll show some comparative pictures. It's really grown steadily every year. And that growth really reflects a very strong commitment from our community to work together towards shared goals. So as we move into the goals, I'll first introduce them by audience. So it's going to be students, staff, and families, caregivers. Then my colleagues will join me, Dr. John Voss, our Director of Teaching and Learning, and Director of Equity and Inclusion, Kiara Zachary, will speak to some of the goals as well. So here are the student goals for 2026-27 draft. So for achieving academic success, by May 2027, 80% of students will meet at least one academic goal per progress monitoring data, as we deepen use of progress monitoring and high quality core instruction. For cultivating equity and inclusion, by May 2027, high school students at District 287 centers will provide input on ethnic studies and other academic offerings during our quarterly design sessions. And for promoting social emotional learning, by May of 2027, the district will develop a comprehensive tiered intervention framework for SEL support with clear referral exit pathways and progress monitoring. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. John Voss, who will explain the Achieving Academic Success student goal in more detail and the community feedback that we received. And then afterwards, Kiara will explain the Cultivating Equity and Inclusion goal.
Thank you, Camille, board members. The overarching theme for students in achieving academic success is that students will meet their individualized academic goals. That's the long-term part of that plan. And so as we're working toward that, our student goal is similar for next year. Since we've been working to establish more consistent practices in progress monitoring, interventions, and tier 1 core instructional practices. We initiated a new system this year to manage our data and reporting for students to make sure that we're keeping on track with their literacy, math, and other academic goals. And so we've recognized needs in those areas to further and more deeply implement some of those practices. So our action plans will include expanding to monitor additional goals, moving from one to a series of them, expanding student voice in how we determine and set the goals, developing a tier 1 tracking of progress in our curriculum overall through our grading process and systems. And then also developing a process for student goal planning that connects academic standards, literacy and math skills, their IEP goals, and their post-secondary goals within a student profile as that begins to come together. And so that's where we're headed. The recommendations from the FOG group were to improve on professional development in those areas, particularly the progress monitoring, reporting process, and those individual core instructional practices.
Pause at each one if there's questions. Is that okay? Any questions?
On the progress monitoring element, is there already technological systems in place that need to be used for that? And it's just in incorporating them more successfully, or do you see a need for further development and investment in tools to help make that happen?
We're pretty solid on the tools. That's part of what we did this year within our student information system, was a way to both identify what the goals are, what the targets are, what the method and the means of tracking and measuring, because students use a lot of different processes for that. There's a large number who use FastBridge curriculum-based measures for literacy. There's also a number who, particularly within our tier 3 programs, are using more emergent literacy outcomes through, it's called Project VC. And then within math, we have a number of different ways to do that. And what we try to do is keep that in a system then where we can take all of those different processes and still focus on, are we making progress for each individual student at the point where they are at to where we would expect them to be.
And then the follow-up to that would be, as we work through that, what kind of communication is brought back to the family and the student, but also the family in terms of that progress monitoring and so on and so forth?
That's been part of our conference implementation this year. At the conferences, we've been able to share that progress with parents and caregivers. Ultimately, that will also be there for them to view within the student information system so that they can see it more readily as they go along. And when we get to the point of the student profile, some of those things will interact and connect so you can gauge where things are at overall.
The continuation goal in the sense of deeper implementation. So we have the new system, this is year one of the new system. Staff are looking for more professional development and progress monitoring and then adjusting instruction for deeper implementation. And so the action steps behind it will be will be different into that next step. But it is really deepening implementation, not just hopping to the next thing. Getting really good at what we do, so.
This year's goal is really about being more purposeful in the organization of our student leadership groups. So by May 2027, our high school students are will be the most impacted and identified group for instructional decisions around the courses that they're able to take for graduation and their graduation requirements. I think we have discussed here, right, that we have been identified as needing comprehensive needs assessment through the Minnesota Department of Education under ESSA, right? And so our tier 2 high school students and our ALC students were identified as needing to be addressed specifically around graduation rates and requirements. And so in order for us to not only fulfill the requirements of that process in organizing students, we also want to be responsive to the needs that they see immediately. By organizing them around our curriculum review processes and recognizing that ethnic studies will be an addition to their graduation requirements, we want to get their voice intentionally. And so we are aligning both the needs of our comprehensive needs assessment and our strategic plan. And again, it's a more intentional way of organizing student voice around something that's operational. Our student groups, while we love them, and we are so glad that students are organizing and finding ways to impact their community, the theme that's run through all of them has really been about community building and finding new ways to be together across programs. And that's beautiful, right? Like, our students see a need to build community and want to be more connected with one another. And right, if our goal is to empower students and to really be responsive to their needs and the things that we know they need, then we need to organize them with more intention and provide some more direction. This is also an extension of our partnership with Good Trouble. And so they've built specifically for District 287 a curriculum-like structure that will allow both our student council advisors and our student council members to walk through specific questions and feedback loops and creating focus groups using our student council, our student leadership groups really as conduits for gathering information and student feedback. So it won't be me or another equity lead or another staff person hearing from students. It'll be student leaders that we've trained to go out and in the methods that they see most appropriate, getting information from their peers around what are the courses that we need to be offering? What does access look like to us? What are the things that we currently have barriers to that we would like to mitigate or navigate? I am very, very excited about the work. And the focus area work group thought that it would be the next best step into ensuring that our students are also helping us identify what are the resources and opportunities that they want instead of, because there's lots of things that we know that they need access to, but how do we focus our attentions and efforts in our strategic plan timeframe? That's it.
Question.
Of course.
So getting them that, I think it's great. The question for me is, from the time that they give that input and so on and so forth, and it goes through the process, for it to then show up in the actual offerings that are then there, what is the time dilation in between that, in that process. From, you know, helping with that, getting it there, so they can see the result of the actual input.
You know, your next presentation will actually inform that a little bit better, to be honest. The curriculum review process and cycle is new and fresh. And so I think a part of aligning what other course developments happen will ultimately be influenced by that timeline. Clearly, I think if there's a super emergent need, right? Like we'll prioritize as necessary, but I plan to be responsive. Like I think we all plan to be responsive and
I'm
not,
just saying that,
yeah.
I know in today's world, right, especially with teenagers and technology and all that kind of stuff, like immediate gratification.
Heck
is
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And of course, nothing in our processes typically is immediate.
Absolutely.
So getting that, the goal of getting their inclusion with this, but also getting them the understanding and education as to this is the process it goes through to get to the result that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
That's not tomorrow.
Yeah,
It takes that time. So that's, the input is important, but it has to work through the process.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Dr. Laura McClune is usually the one who kind of manages the promoting social emotional learning. She couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to take this one. But the goal here, again, to support students meeting their SEL goals, the district will develop a comprehensive tiered intervention framework for social emotional support, including clearly defined referral and exit pathways and progress monitoring expectations by May 2027. So for this SEL goal, our work group recommended that we strengthen our Tier 1 social emotional learning supports. Tier 1, as you know, is the universal supports that all students receive. And the work group also added that they would like to see more structured interventions when students need extra help. So the goal is for all staff to have a shared understanding of how and when interventions happen, so we can stay consistent across programs and continue improving outcomes for our students. Any questions about that goal? Or, yeah, any questions?
Yeah.
Oh.
So how is this happening today? We're kind of a building by building, program by program kind of thing.
Because it is happening today, you're
Yeah,
right.
sure
Yeah,
it
it is.
Yeah.
It's just, we want to make sure that what is happening in each program and building is going to be consistent and the same. I think right now we're seeing a little bit of inconsistency. I'm going to look over to my colleagues to see if there's more to
I
add.
could add, so if we think about the strategic plan goal, first it was designing that curriculum. Remember, we did year one, we identified tier 1 curriculum.
Yeah.
This year, they're identifying goals and progress monitoring on that. What the teachers are saying and needing, and the team needing is, okay, if that's not working, what's next? How do I level up my tiered system of support? And what other tools would we have, or frameworks or strategies? And so it's extending the goals that we've been working on and building a multi-tiered system of support specifically around us.
So is this sort of analogous to, like, we have an MTSS
Yes.
process
Yes.
in Eden Prairie that also we're trying to make sure is consistent?
Yes, it's
From-
exactly.
That's okay.
The academic and the SEL portion.
Yeah.
It says that is exactly where we're moving.
Got it.
That framework.
Yeah.
It's, we had to have foundational things like curriculum and ways to monitor progress, and make adjustments. And then what does that whole framework look like? So that's exactly where we're going.
Cool.
Okay, great. And then any other questions that maybe came up for you on the other goals that we want to visit before we move on? Okay. Okay, so for our staff goals, we noticed overlap in the feedback for academic success and equity. So we brought those two areas together and made one goal about culturally responsive teaching practices. So here are the staff goals for achieving academic success and cultivating equity and inclusion. By May 2027, District 287 will adopt a framework for implementing culturally responsive teaching practices as measured by participatory research action activities. So research and quarterly collaboration opportunities with staff, students, and family caregiver groups. For promoting social emotional learning, By May 2027, all full-time staff will participate in 4 social emotional learning activities to strengthen the implementation of SEL practices across all learning environments. So I'm going to invite Kiara and Dr. John Voss to come up and explain the feedback of that first goal.
Hi, again. So the AAS, Achieving Academic Success and Cultivating Equity Inclusion Focus Area Work Groups requested to come together after the second Focus Area Work Group meeting of the year, mainly because they realized that the 5-year goals for both Achieving Academic Success for staff and for Cultivating Equity and Inclusion for staff were interdependent. We cannot have community or have a district culture that really celebrates diversity and advances inclusion if we are not culturally responsive practitioners and vice versa. And so since one isn't possible without the other, to bring and show that alignment more clearly to our community and all of our key audiences, they wanted an opportunity to collapse the staff goal. They also felt that by having done really foundational work as far as self-reflection and their social identity activities this year, that it's now not about just getting to know self, but it's about changing personal practice. And that'll be evident, hopefully, in the feedback that they provide and in the selection and development of an instructional framework that we'll all agree to. And so the work that they've done as far as how they want to be not only for themselves, with each other, with students, with families, all of the work that they've done this year should come out in the framework. And that they feel prepared to engage really respectfully, thoughtfully, in that process.
I can add a couple things.
Sure. So the overarching theme for the academic achievement part of that is that staff would demonstrate the knowledge and skills to deliver culturally responsive instruction. And so a lot of the action plans that we're looking at would include continuing our collaborative teams, that this would work through that process. And then within the framework that Kiara talked about, to look at some of the models we've had previously, some of the practices that we've done through looking at some of the areas like Goldie Muhammad's work and Zaretta Hammond, heading in Ready for Rigor and possibly pedagogy of voice. Those are all things where there have been pockets of implementation. And so we want to pull some of those together. Also involving student and parents, a big part of that, and developing some success criteria so that we know what other indicators we can see that it's being impactful readily.
That sounds great.
So they were there.
Right, so for the staff SEL goal, the focus groups really placed an emphasis on something important, and that's really building adult capacity in social emotional learning. So in other words, we need to start with ourselves first. So like Michael Jackson sings, I'm starting with the man in the mirror. We're going to make that change with ourselves first, right? So they also suggested connecting this goal to our equity work. So just like you heard Kiara say with the Achieving Academic Success, we're going to make sure that this ties into that Cultivating Equity and Inclusion staff goal from this year, including the reflection on social identity. And also research really supports this direction. So when educators, staff strengthen their own social emotional skills, it benefits everyone. So teachers report higher job satisfaction, lower burnout, and stronger relationships with students. So overall, these activities are designed to really help staff both model SEL in their classrooms and feel more supported in their own practice. Very similar to what Kiara was saying too. Any questions on this goal?
Yeah, there's part of the for social emotional learning. There is some component that isn't going to be adults. And that we teach it and we also have to learn it ourselves. And so this would be in that model of social emotional learning. This would get the adult quadrant development. If we continue to work on the students.
Yes.
About that, thank you for including this and talking about Castle, I'm wondering, have you gotten any staff pushback on this?
No, no, we haven't gotten any staff pushback on this one. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the most challenging pieces of this work is not just learning, but internalizing.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, do you have any ideas about how you're gonna help facilitate that?
Yeah, we're working. Oh, go ahead, Marcy.
There's frameworks that we'll use and, implementation, we can get professional development.
Yeah.
Staff meetings, but as this has some resources that we'll be accessing. to
Yeah,
support
okay.
implementing staff.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions about that goal or the other goal? Okay. So the family caregiver goals, these goals are really focusing on partnering with families to support both academic success and SEL and on making our inclusion efforts stronger. So here are the family caregiver goals. For achieving academic success and promoting social emotional learning by May 2027, staff will implement conferences that include student engagement and the use of district tools to strengthen caregiver partnerships and collaborative communication about students, academic and social emotional growth as measured through caregiver feedback. For the cultivating equity and inclusion, the goal says by May 2027, participation, thank you, of Black, Asian, American Indian, and Hispanic Latine families in the climate survey will increase from less than 1% to 25%. So I'll call up Kiara and John again, John first and then Kiara to talk about these goals.
Thank you. So in this one, we partner with social emotional learning. And the overarching theme for academic success in this area is that families and caregivers are empowered through collaborative partnerships and resources to support students in reaching their academic goals. And so our aim here is to build on what we did with conferences this year, continuing with that and enhancing them with further student engagement. That's the part that we want to build on, is having students leading and participating in the preparation for that. And with tools to strengthen those relationships with the caregivers. We talked a little bit about that before, is providing them not only with the information that we have, but with the ability to look within the student information system and see where things are in terms of grading, progress monitoring, attendance, and the other information that we have there. So those action plans would include that, along with communicating with caregivers on particular plans for students who are not making progress and how they're going to improve and grow through that. And then systematizing some of the feedback across sites, more training and communication around so that how the conferences work and some potential things that caregivers can bring to conferences to ask about. And a lot of those tools, resources on conference information, resources for supporting reading, math, SEL, and content area improvements at home, and student preparation for conferences and helping support that. So it's really deep dive into how we can make conferences more of a partnership experience with the parents and caregivers.
So reiterate, start with the academic goals, the social emotional goals. Students are really participating in developing those goals. You know, we're in year 3 of it. We're going into and having ownership, being self-reflective of how they're doing, and then we're bringing that into conferences too. So there's a theme running through it. We articulate that.
Okay. So we may have gotten this data before, but what has been the participation rate overall in conferences by family?
You'll get that data, because this year was really about conferences.
Yeah.
So-
So we haven't gotten that data.
We haven't gotten it yet, but you will get it in the spring as the end of this year's goals. It was a change of practice.
Yeah,
in
for
Some
sure.
sites, and so, we had some growth from fall to spring. And continued to bring, growth in, engagement. And we use engagement loosely, you don't have to
Yeah.
physically
Sure.
be at conference, but that we have a dedicated time to talk about not just IEP goals,
Right.
but how are students doing in their academics, how are students doing in the social emotional curriculum that we're using. So it's a little teaser for the spring.
I will look forward to that.
The current structure of conferences as it stands, do students sit in on their conference?
Not always. Am I right on that? You want to expand?
In many cases they do, and in a lot of cases it's paired with a family night. So the students and the whole family is there, and then the parents and the students can connect together. But it's dependent on the family and the time, and so it's always encouraged, and part of what we want to do next year is have a role for them as well in that.
Being paired with family, like there's a gift to that, and then there's also there's fun activities other than conferences. So we had to find that balance.
And just to add, like what Superintendent Dad was saying, not all of them have been in person. So then teachers have been creative, just like at all your districts, right? It could be virtual, it could be through an email, but they're always making sure that there's contact with family to know how their kids are doing, the progress that's happening. Any other questions? So this goal is really, the focus area work group was really concerned about creating or assessing families and caregivers feeling seen, valued, and heard with using the metrics that we currently have. So there are a number of ways that we determine that we can measure whether or not families feel seen, valued, and heard. And so part of the work that we did as a strategic implementation team this year was going through various channels to adopt a family engagement framework. So we're using one from the Flamboyant Foundation's research-based, and it allows us to use several indicators to assess families' relationship with our schools and our district. For the strategic plan, instead of as we collect, because this year we just adopted the Flamboyant framework, the focus area work group wasn't very comfortable in setting a strategic plan metric around growth in a specific area because we weren't really able to identify, based on the current feedback we had from families, what should be the priority, right? This year, we've organized families through coffee and donuts and site leadership teams with full service community schools. And they each have different site level programs that they've been doing, and they've been very passionate about those. And similar to the themes that we've seen with students, families are also very have prioritized really connecting with one another, building relationships with one another. Again, I shared at the last board meeting, right? Like we have family Facebook groups now. And those networks of families didn't exist before. So now because families are more connected to one another, they feel more connected and have a shared identity of the schools that they attend. We hope that helps us get more responses to our climate survey and to family engagement in the ways that we want to receive feedback from families in general. So the focus area work group wants us to increase that sample, increase the number of families that we're able to connect with so we can better respond to and be more trusting of the ways in which we're moving. So we specifically identified racial groups of Black, Asian, North American, Indigenous, and Hispanic and Latino because they were the lowest represented groups within our demographics of the 2025 climate survey. The focus area work group felt that because we have more well-established
full service community school programs at our North Education, South Education, and West Education centers, along with family groups at all five of our all five of our schools, that going from less than 1% last year to 25% at the end of next year was appropriate, because we'll likely be somewhere, hopefully, we plan to be somewhere in the middle this year. And that the year over year increase seemed very doable to them. Our principals and staff were very excited and have lots of ideas for incentivizing participation, not only for families and caregivers, but also for staff to continue to connect with families. And they had lots of ideas that I can't wait to explore during our next year's strategic implementation team meetings.
Any final questions about the draft goals?
Not a question. I just want to express my gratitude in the level of work that went into this and the feedback that was taken seriously and implemented in new goals. So thank you for that. And also thank you for calling out the way it is increased engagement of students and I heard, I think 3 times, students leading, which I deeply appreciate and is refreshingly new to hear at this board table. Kudos on all of it. I'm so excited to see where we are when we get an update. Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I just want to thank you all for your support, especially Superintendent Dowd. I mean, she has really been the one to lead all of us in this work. And so we're very grateful for her leadership, but also your leadership as well. I mean, without you in the partnership, it would be really challenging to do this work. So thank you to all of you. So yeah, we'll bring the final recommended goals to you in May for a final approval. So you'll see it then and a bit of a progress on how we're closing out the year on our current goals. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Best is to stay up, I think. We have under our curriculum review cycle 10-year plan.
Thank you, Chair Casey, Superintendent Dowd, and board members. I'd like to ask my colleagues to introduce themselves briefly.
Hi, I'm Erin Doherty, a curriculum and instruction manager.
Hello, Cariana Garcia Luna, curriculum and instruction manager as well.
Thank you. The curriculum and instruction manager position is when we just started last year. So it's what we've had for 2 years. Erin's been in 2 years, Cariana in 1. And I have to say it's made an enormous impact on the amount of support, implementation, and review that we've been able to do with our curriculum the past 2 years. A lot of it due to their efforts, and much of the review process updating that we have put together here is a result of the work that they've done just over this year. So want to give big kudos there. And so part of why we have been updating it is to bring a greater level of consistency to our review process. Over the past years, it's generally work that our curriculum groups meet by subject area and work on ensuring that the standards are met through their instruction. And then they identify areas for projects where we need to do improvements or development or make some changes. And so when the state standards are reviewed and updated, that's been our primary opportunity to more formally review our curriculum resources. And at that time, we would establish work groups to spend more time on clarifying where the standards are met, where the curriculum updates or changes are needed. And we've also initiated this process when we've had program changes that required closer attention to our resources. So for instance, our K-8 literacy curriculum, we went through a review and adoption process back in 2018, 19, or 20 to address the needs of our growing elementary and middle school populations at both NEC and SEC and bring some consistency to that curriculum. When the science standards changed, we and they were shifting to phenomenon-based learning, caused a fair amount of disruption in the way science was presented. And so we had a work group that dug into that for a good 2 or 3 years, even throughout COVID, to begin training on how that would work. And then a couple of years ago, we went through an essential standards identification process to establish some consistent learning target in the areas across all of our programs. In the subject areas, specifically in the core content areas that had standards changes that were coming. And yet there's been inconsistencies in how this plays out. We have had instances where changes take place a little too often, or where the implementation varies. We've had more attention paid to preference or what's working in particular pockets rather than decisions based on evidence. And we're always trying to make our student access more equitable. So the process that we've been looking forward to now, and where we've had things in place, will provide some stability, some stronger alignment, a little more intentional use of how our coaching and PD is planned out, and would hopefully and expectedly to have then some stronger student outcomes in that. This ensures that we've got standards aligned learning, consistent expectations for teaching and learning in the classroom, fully aligned curriculum decisions, and then also support for caregivers when we talk about what happens in conferences and we start pulling in grading and curriculum progress into our information system to share with them. This provides a little more consistency and stability there. So we organized the process with a few pieces in place. First of all, we'll talk quite a bit about the framework and what's done each year in about a 10-year cycle. And then also jumpy there. And then also in the cycle by content area. So in what order the programs will go through that cycle each time through, based in large part on the MDE review process cycle. And then we'll still have our curriculum groups. They always will be reviewing the standards and work specifically with the materials and the development projects that we come up with. We also have now started our teaching and learning advisory, which we'll hear more about in the future. And that group helps to ensure that alignment with our district priorities and also with the state requirements. And then when it comes to implementation, that's where our district and site leadership plays a big role in supporting coaching and professional development. Some of those key audiences, then we've got the teachers who are directly involved through feedback on pilots and their insights into the classroom implementation, ongoing reflection on the process. And then our site leaders continuing to support the consistency with the staff. Our instructional coaches also involved heavily with teachers one-to-one in the classroom on how they're working with the students. Our department, again, supporting the alignment of standards. And our equity, student support, including our special education teams, that's where we're involved with ensuring access for diverse learners and making sure that we've got scaffolding and differentiation. And then with the students and caregivers, we'll be constantly getting feedback on their engagement and the relevance that we're seeing to them and the students and families in the communities as well. So all of that comes into a process that I will turn over to Erin to start digging into more specifically.
I can't look at the slides and look at my notes at the same time. So I'm like, do I want my glasses up or down? So the curriculum review framework supports strong instruction by ensuring, like John said, that the materials, the assessments, and the supports are all aligned to standards and meet I've heard the unique several times tonight, the unique needs of our learners, right? And because we all know that our students are entitled to equitable access to standards aligned instruction. And there's a lot of ways that it can look, and it's really beautiful here in a lot of places and how we're going to systematize that. Something that it's easy to get caught up in. There have been times when impulsive decisions have been made, right? Like John said, like only a certain group of people had the loudest voice, and we want to make sure that our decisions are made with the input of everybody who is going to be impacted by those decisions, obviously. So a nice thing about our review framework phases is that student and teacher feedback is sort of baked into each phase of the cycle. And it is a cycle, it aligns with the cycle of continuous improvement, right? Because that's what curriculum is. Like Superintendent Dowd said earlier, we want to be able to get really good at what we do. So if we're hopping from this to that, to this, to that, right, that doesn't give us the chance to train and improve and fill some gaps that we didn't anticipate, right? Like we anticipate that there will be gaps and we can get ahead of some of them, and there's always something that pops up. So the first phase, like it is a cycle, so I don't want to act like it's step 1 or step 2 or anything, is analyze. And that's where we get really, really clear on what problem it is that we're trying to solve. So we're identifying strengths, what's working with what we have, what gaps have we noticed, what is the student data saying, what are the teachers saying about the usability, how much adaptation, modification things need, always aligned to standards. But we have to be clear on the problem, right? Like, is this a curriculum problem, an implementation problem, or an instructional problem? Because without that information, right, we're solving the wrong problem and creating more down the road. So after that, when we're clear on what we're looking for, then we go to explore, right? And student and staff voice is always a part of these work groups throughout. Like the ones that are underlined literally have agendas linked to them with like, this is who you talk to. This is the stuff we got to know. This is how it all goes together. This is how it matters moving forward. So we will, based on our problem, we'll review possible resources with a rubric that's aligned to the needs that match the problem that we've identified. We make sure that it's going to, there's always going to be trade-offs. No curriculum is ever going to be perfect, right? And special education teachers and a lot of other support people work really hard to adapt things so that everybody is getting what they need. So that's part of it. Once we have with our rubrics, right, like say you identify 5, there's sort of, let's like quick, this one's no good. I see this one's no good. You narrow it down to like 2 to 3, I think, is what I have in the agenda items that are linked to that one. But then we start planning. I recently read a research article about year 0 and how that's the most important year in curriculum implementation, which based on this cycle is the planning phase. That's where we would be really, really intentional and thoughtful about the implementation supports. What kind of pacing guidance do we need? What kind of gaps do exist in this one that we can get ahead of so the teachers have what they need when they're in the classroom? What kind of professional learning are we going to plan? How is the coaching going to support this so that we are continually up in our game? And then once we have done that, then we start small, right? We pilot, we test and learn. We test materials and approaches in classrooms. We get feedback, like I've said a couple times, in a number of different ways from a whole bunch of people. And then I'm going to pause it there because historically scale hasn't been there, right? And moving from pilot to install, what have in the past maybe been identified as a curriculum problem were often implementation or instructional problems. So we're slowing down a tiny bit between pilot and install so that we can scale it, right? You guys are really good at this. You got to pilot. Now we're going to spread it through this program, or now we're going to start with these 2 rooms in each program and build from there. And that, I mean, it's going to look different depending on what we're trying to install, obviously. But scaling is we're building consistency across classrooms and programs by, again, refining materials, pacing supports. Then we install, like we're there. We're establishing shared routines and expectations. The curriculum is implemented consistently across sites, understanding that like there's lots of ways to do this work well. So like if I'm using curriculum in my room and Kariana's using it next door, like we're different people, it's going to look different, but we got the same materials. We're collaborating on how we're using it. The expectations are consistent. Teachers know what they're supposed to be doing and they know how they're supposed to be doing it. And then once we're installed, right, we're always assessing. Is the student, what does the student data say? What are the students saying? How are we going to adjust? So then we refine and adjust, right? So that we're continually getting better. And it is a 10-year cycle, which like John said, aligns to how MDE reviews the standards. And I also feel obligated to say, like Kiara says, like if there's like a super urgent need, like it's okay, like we're still gonna be responsive, right? It doesn't mean we wait to respond. We are always up in our game with scaffolds. We're always making instructional adjustments. We have tons of support from the coaches. We're always getting better at embedding SEL. The cycle just ensures that we're being really thoughtful and really intentional to make sure that we're getting our students what they need and that our teachers have the skills to deliver it. Am I talking too fast? Sorry. Okay. I'm like way more than what I have in my notes. So responding to needs, right? We adjust in real time, just like a teacher does in a classroom. Hey, I'm having trouble with this lesson. I might go next door. I might email Erin or Kariana and be like, hey, come help me figure this out, right? We're going to partner with the coach to get these things in place so that we're providing access to our students. So those are the instructional decisions. The adoption decisions is whatever I've just been talking about. And there's a link to sort of like what would you say, like a sample, foundational, a really solid rubric that aligns with our district's like goals and values and needs in the curriculum. Oh, passing it out to Kariana. I got carried away.
So she took a lot of my stuff, but that's fine. Not new. So we're looking at like curriculum working over time. It really is looking at decisions being based on patterns of evidence and not just like isolated data points. Evidence is used throughout the cycle. We look at student learning evidence aligned to standards and graduation requirements, classroom implementation data, feedback from key audience, especially teachers and students, and coaching observations and trends. So this very colorful chart is the 10-year cycle. Little like first time seems a little daunting, but it lines up to there of like, here's the year. So right now, if you look at like 25, 26, and you go and then I'm seeing it too. I think of my glasses here, picking the choices here. If you look like fully implemented, you have ELA, and that's where we're at right now. So fall done, fully implemented. We're in the install stage for math, elementary and middle, and personal finance. And then we are doing the planning work for work experience and ethnic studies right now, because ethnic studies is a new requirement coming. So that's kind of how that kind of works. And so when it comes to, I do want to note this because this question came up. Aaron, thank you for reminding me about that. So if you look on here, that kind of like tealish colored box is tier 3. And that's, we got this question of like, why is this separate? Students receiving special education services are considered throughout the entire cycle. So it's not like we only consider it while we do this tier 3. What is the tier 3 considerations of also like I said, they're being embedded, but this ensures that we're really digging deep into those tier 3 needs with, what's the best way of saying this? I guess
Attention to the nuances, or
that's a good way of putting that. So looking at that within that space, but it's not saying that we're not looking at that within every other area as well.
because it's so highlighted.
Yes, exactly.
We need a lot of intentionality around tier 3 because there is no box.
Yep.
And so we really do, I appreciate the intersectionality of it throughout the whole cycle, but we acknowledge in that, in the history of any curriculum cycle, there was a miss with tier 3. And tier 3 has been an area that hasn't had consistent resources, teachers to support students. So that's the intentionality.
Thank you. And then so here's like resources that we have available. We really were in kind of intentional at providing various ways that staff can access resources when it comes to curriculum. Really depending on the levels of understanding and instructional planning, also experienced and inexperienced teachers. So we got the course catalog that has all the courses in there, and they can access them through the curriculum through there. Course at a glance, which is a quick kind of overview of the course. They can do it by grade band, or they can use the curriculum guides in there. So we're really trying to use the curriculum portal, many different ways they can get to it. All the things are linked together, and making sure they have access to the curriculum and ways to help them support using the curriculum within the classroom. And then how the curriculum review cycle supports students' success is that it's all connected. This connects to our universal unit unpacking process that we've really been doing a lot during our curriculum groups throughout this year. And it's really making that really clear alignment between standards to instructional practices to grade level learning to stronger student outcomes. So really being very intentional about that when we use our curriculum. And any questions?
So, given that this is kind of a new process-ish, right? Like, what's it like to jump into an area of curriculum kind of in the middle? Right? I mean, because, you know, to put a more structured process in place, your brain could go to, okay, we're gonna start with analyze and evaluate across the board, right? But everything isn't starting there because that's not in sync with MDE's cycle.
Do you want that one or- Okay.
Okay, you want to do it? Okay, go for it.
Well, yeah, so it's not like fresh out of the box
Yeah.
new. It's building on the things that we've had in place. So like last year, site leaders at North and South Elementary and Middle, we collaborated and because we were looking at the math, right? So we looked at where we are, and I think like right now, I might be in pilot, right? Yeah. Scale. So we're at, where are we? Like, this curriculum exists, this curriculum exists, this curriculum exists, right? Depending on where you're at. Okay, does everybody know how to use it? Ooh, oh, right? What are we gonna do for the people who don't know how to use it? Are these the ones that we want them to be using, right? Like, we started with something that was sort of exactly where it was supposed to be. And then like, okay, now what are we gonna do? So then as a collaborative group, we decided, you know what, let's have a reboot and let's get really solid at collecting the data so that we have the evidence to support us the rest of the way so that when this comes back around, right? So focus groups with teachers, I've talked to students, I've observed in classrooms. We've made some adjustments along the way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
It is a little bit of a workflow.
Yeah.
And a fiscal, when you're buying resources.
Yeah.
You can't buy across it all.
Right.
That staging is part of it too, and in each of that, we might have pockets of it done and would just systematize them for completion.
Gotcha. Thanks.
The question I kind of wrote down was similar to that, but it was really like, what's been the staff's response to this framework? So like as a newer kind of revamped kind of thing and so on and so forth, especially when you talk about evidence-based, right? I can imagine that if you've had certain staff who've been doing this for a long time, they kind of have a theme, they kind of know what they're doing, so on and so forth, and they just kind of feel it a certain way, right? As how to approach a way of dealing with something. But when you then bring in more of an evidence-based kind of component that might not fully match up to where they're at.
I don't know if you want me to answer this, but I can just give you an example of working with a staff just this past week and talking about this and questions about a curriculum and why are we looking at a certain thing and where we're at. And when I was able to show them this process and the cycle, they're like, oh, well, this makes sense. They're like, now this is evidence that we are actually have a process, that we are actually using evidence, that we actually are including people in this. So like, even if we're not talking about their content at this moment, they're like, okay, this makes sense. I know where we're going now.
Great.
So it was actually a really good response of what we're getting. So far.
Excellent. I wasn't trying to foreshadow that there would be a bad response, but I could imagine as a professional person or whatever it is, when you sometimes, especially when it comes from a district level component,
Yep.
you're then dropping a framework onto something within the classroom. It would be natural from human psychology to have people who might, I'm feeling that a bit.
And I think
There's
it's-
resistance, right? There's
Yeah.
resistance, right?
Sure.
But I think part of it too is both that our staff have been asking,
For this.
so there's an interest.
Got it.
And I would want to say there's a history of using evidence-based resources and strategies, but it was not coordinated.
Got it.
So it's not that we're new at evidence-based practices, but it does mean that if I'm in classroom, maybe class would be, what did mean that we were using the same resources or that the students got the same experience. So not that they need to, because there is uniqueness,
Mhm.
but yet allowing like, here's what the standards are for this grade.
I think the way I always think about it when we're dealing with this type of stuff is, do people feel it's being done to them or with them, for them? You know, that.
The above,
psychology,
yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Um,
Is that, and you're gonna have people at different, through this process, you're gonna have people who are gonna feel that differently and whatever it is. It's just important that for the intention, right, is to do this for them, not to them.
With them, honestly,
With them.
right? Like, that's why the
As much
makeup
as
of
you
the
can
work
with
group
them,
is
but
so
I-
important,
Yeah.
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 And that's why the teacher and student feedback is baked in all along the way.
Yeah.
When we built personal finance, was that last year too?
It's all right.
Yeah, I mean, we had a teacher, we had an AP, we had care and treatment, we had South, we had an ALC. And we, like, a lot of us have relationships all over the place. I've been here for a really long time.
Yeah.
So, which I appreciate that people are honest with me. So like, hey, where are we stuck? Right? When we go sit down, okay, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Like, how are we gonna make this work for us? And the other thing is, like, doing this work is really hard. Like I said before, it looks a lot of different ways. Nobody's asking for like clones of each other from room to room, right? Just like the kids are different, so are the teachers, and the teachers adapt to the needs of the students. So, one of the things I think that we're really careful about is like, how are we gonna provide these foundational materials, and then how much room
Right.
do we allow? And then like, what are the supplements that fit that? And we get recommendations on supplements all the time, and then you vet them and you're like, this is great, let's share it out. Other ones were like, I don't know about that one, like maybe for a 15-minute Friday fun, but not as a
Yeah.
supplement to the curriculum.
Thank you.
I have some questions just to kind of gather a baseline, because in my district, when I sit at the table, we're talking general ed students and rarely special ed students. So exactly what do you mean by tier 3? Because I know you guys operate a little bit different.
It's the special education group that in our classification has the highest level of staff support need. And so we have certain curriculum resources that are unique to that population, and also that combine subject areas in some cases. And so that's why there's both content specific area, subject within them, and there are some things that pull it all together. And if there's a better way to explain this.
These are our
special ed group.
highest level of students that are still maybe working on a mode of communication, using functional instruction. So, we tier, which is really hard when you're in a multi-tiered system of support. Very different tiers.
And there's the federal setting.
Right, we used to, so it's not the federal, we're a federal setting 4. Before we've organized maybe more by categorical disabilities. And we noticed racial profiling for certain identifications of disabilities over others. And so what they did, they developed in District 287 prior to my arrival here. You might be 10 years into tiers.
Not quite.
Not quite.
I was there.
So, but then.
8,
It's
7.
the function level communication And then they're programmed if they need tier one support, which would be having more access to general education curriculum, the modifications, plus student staff ratio, and it goes up based on those.
Okay, so then my other question is, are you looking at then general education curriculum, or are you looking at companion materials to like some general education curriculum?
Both. And the general education curriculum is at the core. That's what we expect to have in place for every student in every tier and every subject area. And then those modifications, scaffolding, supplemental support, supplemental resources, modifications, alternatives, there's a whole range of that takes place within it. But part of what we're trying to establish is there is a grade level general curriculum available to every student. And how they access that then is where we work through the curriculum groups and the programs and the coaches to understand what do we need to do to provide student access to that level contact. The unit unpacking that Carrie Ann and Aaron talked about is where the curriculum groups have been spending a lot of their time. Is here's the unit that would generally apply across the board. How do we need to adjust that, unpack it, modify it, adapt it, or supplement it in order to provide consistent access for across the board?
Some places.
Replays, but
So in those places, then is there a lot of teacher then created materials to supplement that, replace that? Or is
Mhm.
there, or do you guys do that differently where there might be a district level person who then supplants whatever that might be?
I think there's a pattern of, teacher creation.
Mhm.
We're trying to blend teacher created materials with, district resources. So we have amazing teachers that are able to take the standards and really modify because there's just nothing, sometimes I can't follow it. Right, and you're modifying it so much, it's obsolete of what you just purchased. So it's the whole thing.
And then you have a place where you are storing these things.
Mhm.
So that, okay,
Yeah.
With that portal.
okay. So then that like has a history of teacher created things that align with standards and curriculum. And then I'm also wondering about options, like for the tier three, like how many curriculum options are there out there for those kinds of?
Yeah, there aren't very many commercially available resources that are designed for that population. We use Unique Learning Systems, which is standards based and has materials across the 4 core content areas, and they're thematically connected so that the things they do in the classroom have a connection between the subject areas. And then we supplement quite a bit because there's different degrees of either student access needs or level of understanding with that. And so we can provide additional literacy, reading materials. Some of our speech language staff and literacy specialists put together book kits that are specifically designed for students who need that kind of support, additional supports there. And then there's another layer of math instruction that's involved with that, and a lot of teacher designed resources as well.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I guess hearing the first presentation in this one, my head kept going to skill streamer.
Mm, yeah.
you know,
Yep.
that curriculum, but that's been around so long. and
I know
so-
that
it's So
one,
old. And then recently, like during COVID, some teachers in Minnesota got together and created like Be Good People.
Yeah.
And it has like tier 1, 2, and 3 stuff, so that's where my head was kind of going, listening to both of them.
There's a lot of good open resources that are available, and so we've spent time on some of that too.
It's big for me, it's just have resources like this isn't working, using with a coach and then having that resource versus like having to spend the time to select. And that's where we got a little too rogue.
Mhm.
So honing that in is what we're trying to do
Yeah.
without hand tying.
The ones you talked about are both SEL. So thinking about the population that we're talking about, like with the highest needs and may or may not be non-speaking, And some of our non-speaking students access the same curriculum as our tier 2 high school. Like, it's not a huge number, but it happens. So like the tier 3 SEL curriculum was sort of written in-house, but based on a few different really solid resources and then like adapted. So that again, we have this foundational thing that everybody can individualize and build off of.
Yeah, congratulations.
Like conversations in it here. Yeah, I'm not an expert. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. I just have, a comment, and a couple maybe questioning things. So as somebody who teaches research methods, thanks for incorporating the action research cycle. It's like, we're all type flighty. And then, I guess my second comment is like, this is really comprehensive and fantastic. And, I'm wondering, was there a model that you use to put it all, bring it all together? Because this is a lot, like that chart by itself is. A lot going on here, right?
That took a lot of time.
10 years and very organized and thoughtful. And with 287 being so unique and so dynamic, you just have a lot of balls in the air. And so I'm wondering, first, if there were models out there that you looked at to help you create it, and second, maybe you should publish this because I mean, I'm serious. Because it's so unique.
Well, we started with the MDE cycle. That was really where we looked at, okay, at the top row is where MDE starts their review. And then the line 7, where it's fully implemented, that's also an MDE timeline that 7 years it takes to go from initial review to full implementation, but that's kind of the way it plays out. And so we were with that, but then we were realizing that it wasn't kind of adding up, like, but then what? Like, now we're all over the place. So we started it last year. At one point, we were laying out some of the things, and we've worked with some of our other intermediate colleagues on this too. And then when we sat back down with it this year to look at, okay, now that we know a little bit more about where we're at, we probably should just do a 10-year cycle. And then it was a matter of figuring out how that works and kind of where the model that Erin and Kariana came up with, or the framework for how we do the cycle. Then we fit in, we added 3 years of assess, reflect, and adjust in order to get to 10. But that also is what happens when you fully implement it. Then before you start over, you do want to take a few deep breaths and roll with it for a while. But instead of it being like, okay, we've implemented it, now we're not gonna look at it again for 10 years. We kind of had to build through that process.
And then member district cycles were factored into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really something. I mean,
Thank you.
yeah, it's kind of amazing.
We fought over the colors too.
It's really gratifying. I mean, there's times in any organization, not just here, where it really feels like an unwieldy octopus. And like today, one of those days where like things feel like they're lining up, and not just today, like the comprehensive needs assessment, the presentation was that just at our last meeting, and then the strategic plan, it feels like I'm hearing the same
Like,
words and the same
Yes.
themes and the same things. And it's not just because it's efficient that way, which it is, and that needs to be the case, but also because it is in alignment with our mission and with the sort of, I guess, this isn't a new idea, but this like really important and profound idea that like our students really deserve access to academic excellence and standards, right? Like that is fundamentally at the core of all of the things that we've just heard. So I appreciate that. I am excited because I think it does feel like we're kind of like the octopus all the legs are going in the same direction. And I think that's Leslie, what kind of you were saying too. So really appreciate this work. And we'll look forward to, I mean, I'm not gonna be here in 10 years from now, but maybe some of you will be, and we'll get to see the long game here.
Thank you. Can I add one thing to your list? We're actually collaborating with Nathan Perez, who
I
was
was
here
just saying
earlier
some
on the
course.
ethnic studies course, just to give you that little extra.
Yep, perfect.
Yep.
Yep. Line up with a little both.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now for something completely different. We have. I say that every time, don't I? I'm so sorry.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
We have our Director of Finance, Scott Sitch, who's going to present first our long-term facilities maintenance 10-year plan resolution, which we will be asked to approve.
All right, perfect. Well, I mean, the times I've presented here, I've always said it. You guys get awesome presentations and I don't know how I follow those, so I apologize in advance. I don't have a big slideshow on either of these two, so you're welcome. Kidding. This is the rare times that I really don't with these things. I know in the past, Brian didn't either, but and these are things, tonight, the first thing we're gonna be going through is the 10-year plan. A lot of you, as members of your school boards, go through this every year, right? So we're similar in that respect. And then we're very different in some ways too, that I'll kind of get into, but one would be we flow through your member districts on the levy. So like I said, I'll start formally. Thank you for the introduction, school board, and Superintendent Dowd. So tonight, we're going to be presenting the long-term facilities maintenance plan and resolution that comes to you annually. And you're also going to see up on the screen, Kurt is on tonight. He is our facilities operations senior manager. And Kurt has been a big part of this with me. So I've appreciated that. It's really helpful to have him there, kind of knowing what the needs of the district are. Probably similar to your districts. This funding stream, depending on if what your districts is one of the 28 that has the pay-go that you can kind of do what you need to, or if you're one of the other districts that can levy up to, I think it's 360 plus the facility age, the multiplier that goes on it. But the needs are always greater than what we can get to, or even if you're a pay-go, I know we struggle to get the things done just because schools have a very short window and it's hard to disrupt during the school year too. So, but anyways, I'll go through kind of the why we're here tonight. So tonight we're starting the annual process for approving the 10-year plan for 287. So all the documents and the ones up here, it's really hard to see. So obviously they're in your board packet. But that's what we'll be going over. So the why, this plan is an annual state requirement and it eventually goes out to your home districts. So you'll see this again, probably not this entire presentation. I think when I was at YZI, I leaned heavily on Brian's presentation and I think Dan might have even talked about it a little bit. So it'll go out to your districts and then it will come back to us, all the resolutions will. For us to send to NDE. So why do we start this so early? Your districts, you probably won't see this until May or sometimes June, maybe even July. And we hope not July because we need them back. But we start early just because we have to flow, like I said, through each of your districts. So we're here tonight just going over this. And just like in schools, and I'll hit on it more, we're looking at fiscal 28. So right now we're in FY 26. Next year's FY 27. We're talking about FY 28, right? So it's already hard to plan in schools, but the state requires us to put this 10-year plan together and come to you. And I will tell you, and I don't want to speak for Kurt, but I think the plans are always good for a couple of years out. But then as you have in your districts, needs come up, things happen, plans change, which is why this literally comes to the board annually, just so we can give you an update. So just like I said, we're living in 3 different years at all times. So that's always kind of fun, right? Kind of interesting. And you probably hear your business manager say it again. And so basically, once we wrap this whole process up, we have to get everything to the department by the end of July, by July 31st. So again, this is an annual process that we come to you to get approving for. And so again, it will be sent to your member districts, right? Following this, probably maybe even tomorrow, we'll start kicking about, sent to MDE by July 31st. It'll be certified this fall of 2026 on your levies. The funding will start coming in 27. And then it will be for expenditures in FY 28. So I say that a couple times just because I think it's kind of fun to talk about that. We're living in 3 different years. So now let's get into a little bit of the background and history. As there was an intentional strategic approach to the LTFM levy management for 287. I think my predecessors did a really good job of planning on this and kind of making sure that the levy could stay stable, where it would have minimal impact to member districts and allow 287 to be able to have an opportunity to address some of the needs with our facilities to be able to provide the important instruction and work that we do for students. So the goal or strategy was put together in prior years was to keep a stable levy. So the number was at 6.2 million. You've probably heard this before. Brian probably talked about it last year, but that 6.2 is made up of the lease levy, and then it's made up of the LTFM that we're talking about tonight. So the lease levy is the greater portion of it. Or I'm sorry, the lease levy is a greater portion, and then LTFM, we kind of back into that number after the debt payment. This was an agreement between the Business Directors Advisory Council called BDAC, which you guys have all heard about. It's your member district business managers, and then 287. This was kind of a creative approach that was brought. So like I said, we can meet those needs. So unlike typical districts, 287 doesn't have a per pupil cap, right? We don't have that 360. We don't have that pay-go. We have to go through the member districts, right? And so in a lot of ways, it's kind of like a mixture of that. So this strategy, we were able to leverage the room that was created when the debt fell off on some of the lease levy, so we can keep it at that 6.2 million. How do you see why I really couldn't do slides? I don't know how I would have done slides. And Dan will tell you I'm the king of slides. I think I had 100 of them most times. So really hard for me not to have slides. But anyways, this allows 287 to increase the LTF funding as the lease levy decreases. So notably, you'll see on your 10-year plan, again, this is really hard to see. So if you reference in your board document, in FY 27, we started to see that shift. So in FY 26, we were getting about, we were bringing in about $200,000 worth of LTFM pay-go levy dollars. And the next year it jumped to over 900,000. And you say, wow, that's a huge jump. Where does that come from? Well, it's just the debt that fell off of the COPs. So basically to keep everything level, we were able to basically capture that and start building fund balances for some of the projects that we'll talk about in a few minutes. So as Brian Schultz described last year, it's a unique opportunity to keep the levy stable, which is good for all parties and all member districts. So how does this impact your member districts? Again, this is a strategic approach to kind of have a neutral impact. By increasing the LTFM levy at the exact same time that the lease levy decreases, the impact on your member districts remains tax neutral. And I'll kind of describe what I mean by that. So remember, these are flow through dollars for the levy, so they're not impacting your operating budgets. So if this strategy wouldn't have been taken on, we'd have done it through our normal operations, and then that would have come back through tuition billing to you. So that would have hit more of your operations, right? So this was a really good strategy. It also keeps consistency without increasing the total financial burden on your taxpayers. They're used to this. They don't get the ebbs and flows, right? Trying to keep things consistent and keep our buildings in really good shape, right? That was kind of the purpose of LTFM, so that you have these annual dollars to make updates so that you're not having to redo a whole building because you let it kind of fall apart, right? And then just looking at it, so just kind of in summary of that, the key benefits to this approach is the taxpayer stability and predictability. It provides a savings account for 287. Well, kind of, you'll see on your document that it waves up and down depending on the needs, but it allows for flexibility for the big ticket items like the roofs, parking lots, and some other big things that are coming up. So, and then just as a reminder, when I talk about savings account, basically because it's a reserve restricted account, those dollars have to stay in that. They can only be used for those certain things. So that was part of the strategy where when you look on your 10-year plan and your board agenda, you'll see the fund balance projection goes up, builds up. We have some big spend downs projects, decreases quite a bit. And that's going to fluctuate. What you see tonight is going to change. like the costs will come in differently, needs will change next year. But it just gives us a decent look at it. So again, it just provides your member district's budget neutrality. So just a good strategic approach. So now referencing that 10-year plan that's up here. And if you can really focus in, it's a joke. Can't see it. I can't see it either. I need to work on my material. Kurt, I should have had you do this. I'm not funny tonight. So, one of the things that's included in here that I think is really, really good is this, what the board needs to know. I don't know if Brian Schultz created that or if that was May, but I thought it was great. I got it when I was at Wayzata, and it does a really nice job of outlining for member district board members kind of what's going on and what this is about, because I think a lot of people can go, why is this coming to our district? Why is this flowing through? So we continued on with that and just updated it with information that Kurt and I and the team worked on that will flow out to your boards. This will go out with what we send to your business managers, but we included it in the board packet this year, just so you guys can see it ahead of time too, right? Because you're kind of advocates for it as well. And then can ask questions to me tonight for further clarification on things. So that'll be included in there. And then just kind of focusing, like I said earlier, we're looking at FY28. So last year approved FY27, year before that FY26. But some of the bigger things on there for FY28 is the health and safety, the same thing that you would see in your districts. And we're projecting about 170,000, and that covers critical compliance items like radon testing, lead and water monitoring, fire safety, to mention a few things. And then the deferred maintenance, that's kind of the big item in that year, and we've got that at about 810,000. Again, these are just estimates. We don't know what costs will come in. What we've experienced and what you probably have experienced in your districts is that costs come in generally higher. Every once in a while you get a win. But it doesn't happen too often. So, but that will be kind of the continuation of self-education, the South Education Center. And Kurt and I have talked pretty extensively about this, but this is kind of a wrap up of the bond issue, but it'll be using LTFM dollars from the PAYGO, right? It'll be from the reserve. And that's going to focus on the geothermal system capping and the parking lot at the same time. So Kurt, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if I say it wrong, you can correct me, but I don't do Kurt's job. He's really good at it. I sit behind a computer and punch numbers, but they have to dig down 7 feet to get to the geothermal wells, and they have to cap them, and it's right around the parking lot area. So it just makes sense to do both of them. So that's kind of the big thing there. And then you'll see the debt service payments too. For 28, it's projected at 781,620. And that's the payment on the 2017 B bond and the 2022 A bond. And then future proofing, we're continuing to build the restricted reserve like I talked about, that savings account. And this will help us tackle that $2 million plus roof replacement between NEC and the DSC that we're in right now. And that's something I know Brian talked about last year. So those would be big ticket items. This strategy by being able to use PAYGO and when the debt fell off, use these dollars allows us to tackle some of these without having to go out to for a bond issue. And then going up farther, that's when we'll kind of look at some of those other big projects that they'll come to you with next year. Again, I'm sure those will change. So, all right. So probably a review for most of you that heard it last year too, but the allocation amount and formula. So you'll see this amount in here. This is part of what goes to the department, and it's the allocation. So like I talked about tonight, we have the debt payment of the 780, and then we kind of back into that PAYGO amount. And then there's an allocation when we get that total amount of that 1.6 million, it gets spread amongst the 12 member districts. And the way that it was determined between the BDAC group and the council was that it would be spread between a mixture that would be 2/3 weighted on a 3-year weighted average of program usage between the 3 programs. And then 1/3 would be the district APUs, which can change obviously. But that's the group agreed that was probably the most fair. And so we continued with that again this year. So you'll see some variations in there. It's slightly down from last year, but that's because we just left a little bit more room in the lease levy for predicted increase. And I think that's what was done in previous years. All right, so next steps, we just went through a lot of information. And again, I didn't have a slide, so I don't think I'm ever gonna do that again. I need a slideshow, but we will, after tonight, if the board approves, we will send all the information out to your member districts. You'll see it again with them. And then all of this will be collected and will be sent to the department by July 31st. And at that point, we'll be completed with that. So with that, I will turn it over to the board members or Superintendent Dowd for any questions.
So I appreciate the agreement with the business directors and trying to keep this cost neutral and so on and so on. But how do you explain then, as inflation and costs go up and the needs change and whatever it is, are we maintaining the 1.6 linearly, or does it have inflationary elements based on the tax bases that we all represent and so on and so forth? I'm just not quite sure of the mechanism in terms of when we're looking for dollars through LTFM.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge with this.
Yes.
And I think that's where, and one thing I didn't mention that I should have, that Superintendent Dowd and I talked about, at some point, there probably will have to be another bond issue to tackle some of the bigger needs, just
Okay.
like you guys did with the 2022A. I don't want to pretend to know the details. That'll be a future discussion. But you're exactly right. Like with that 6.2 cap with the lease levy and then the debt payment with the LTFM, and then the spread that we were talking about tonight, those dollars, we're not talking about a huge amount of dollars.
No.
Last year at 920,000, that was big. This year, it's less than that. It's in the 800s. But those don't go a long ways, but you can see the team's been really strategic about how we do this. I feel kind of bad, and I told Superintendent Dowd this, and Kurt, apologize, I'm not putting you on the spot again, but I first did the exercise of, Kurt, will you update the 10-year plan? Tell me what you need. And when Kurt spent a bunch of time, he did a great job, labeled everything. And then he and I met and I said, this is really great. Here are the dollars we have.
Right.
Now, what do we do? And so we just did this again the other day, Kurt, where we said, what did we do with this? Oh yeah, we moved it out 2 years past what we wanted to do. So you're absolutely right. That's the challenge that we have. And I would say even in the state of Minnesota, the 28 districts that I talked about, that's a huge advantage to be able to use that PAYGO. But they have made, you know, with the roofs and all that stuff, they have made progress with the other districts. But I think that'll just be continued discussion. I don't know, Superintendent Dowd, if you wanted to make any comments on that.
I think it's exactly right. It's what we talked about when Brian shared, allowing us to, when the bond dropped off. All of that was huge.
Yep.
Even one consistent for your taxpayers, but it also allowed us to do some of the smaller projects. But we would look at when some of those expenditures go off, so try to keep it in.
Well, I guess I just want to make sure that like, that 287 is not constantly behind the 8 ball because of this agreement. As things change and certainly the financial environment of whatever it is that's there. Certainly Dyna certainly is going through this down its own issues that we have right now, that we have, just like other people have referendums and bonds and levies and all that kind of stuff. We're now facing our own kind of situation. And the decision-making part right now is like, okay, well, we know the core things we have to do. Now there's some things we would like to do. Here's things we would love to do. Do you do it in one go, or do you spread that out, or whatever? And so I'm just concerned as far as what, especially for an LTFM.
Yeah.
Forgetting other capital stuff, just LTFM, we delay and delay and delay when you don't have the funding.
Yeah.
And everyone has become masters of that. I'm sure Kurt's a master at knowing how far can he actually take something before it breaks.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm just not telling you strategically, and I'm probably not so much looking here, I'm more looking here.
Yeah.
That I want to make sure that you have support, or that, at least for me personally, from a guidance standpoint, I don't want to leave 287 in a disadvantaged position of not taking care of its needs just because of the financial stress that we're all under. I want to make sure, and I'm sure we are doing it, but I just wanted to articulate it tonight, that I'm concerned about that, given the way this, even though it's a great setup for stability, sometimes that comes at a cost to what Kurt needs.
We're gonna continue to look at that out when that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I would imagine at some point, if need be, the conversation will start with the business managers from the member districts to say, okay, 6.2 is not cutting it anymore. We need to go to whatever, right? And so it's a process.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're definitely right. I think it would start with Superintendent Dowd and the facilities team and leadership and talk about what are those needs, and then that would come to BDAC and to the board and kind of move forward that way. So your member districts have been extremely supportive. They seemed very supportive of this method just because it has that neutrality that we talked about.
Well, I think it's better than having to do it on the tuition side.
Yeah,
That's like,
agreed.
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
wants to do that.
Nobody wants to do
So,
that.
so I mean, so there's advantage to doing it this way
Yeah.
for our purposes too.
Sure.
But I just want to make, sometimes, I just worry sometimes that 287 is kind of on the prioritization part can sometimes fall further down, and I just don't want it to go too far down. That's really my point.
I hear that, and I don't feel that. right?
Good.
I just had a couple of questions around terms that were used that I don't know what they mean.
Okay,
So you said COPs.
certificates of participation. They're just a debt tool.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And then you also said when you were talking about how the different allocations were made.
Yep.
The first part I understood, but then you said 1/3 is APUs.
Oh, I need to get away from acronyms. I live in the world of acronyms
Yeah,
with
that's
UFARs and all that.
fine. We
Adjust,
all live in the world of
yeah,
acronyms.
adjusted pupil units.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Sorry.
Appreciate it.
For you, I say this, and for our two board members, this is one of the only times where you're gonna talk about 287, you know, with your home board, right? There's not a lot of times where we have a really specific thing that we're talking about at our home, district. So, I love what the board needs to know. I think it's been a couple years since we've been getting those, and it's been super helpful to kind of look through those talking points, take them to your board and be able to answer those questions. One of them being, I think always, every year I say, this is how this allocation is, this is how this structure is. You don't have to say, it's this whatever percentage, but
Yeah.
for people to understand that it's partly how much we use 287 and partly how big we are, right? That is the kind of the fairest way that we've come up with too. And that, you know, we're all gonna be, I mean, in St. Louis Park, we always do the 287 LTFM on the same night, right? As our
Okay.
Local one, so that we're kind of doing how many of our districts, our member districts are in that top whatever group? You know what I mean? Where they don't have to do they don't have the LTFM.
Geez, I'm not sure.
Like,
I
You
know
would-
Dinah is.
Yep, it
We're
was
in-
that
We're
is,
definitely one.
Yeah, so like a few, so like.
Yep.
So that is,
Eden
it's
Prairie
not
would be-
exactly the same for
Right.
everyone because of that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
there are some districts that have access to.
Yep.
Board approved, I guess, right, LTFM, and then some that have a cap.
Right.
And it depends on the size of your district, so it's the top
28. And that's a contentious, very contentious
Very
thing to
contentious.
talk about. So I dreaded even
I'm
bringing
like,
it up
I'm
tonight.
Getting warm, just even saying.
Okay.
But it does mean that sometimes it feels a little bit different to go to your board, depending on which side of that you're on.
Yeah.
Because they might not be used to this conversation that we were having.
Agreed.
But like, so,
Well,
in any case, it's very good to take that to your board and be able to be a little bit of a cheerleader for 287 and say, this is what we're doing. It's very similar to what we're doing in our home district. We're doing ROPS too, like it's like what we all have to do. And this is how the model gets put together. Like, what questions do you have? So,
well,
thank you for that.
and warn your business manager that you're gonna toss some of the questions to them to.
Well, they should, they,
When you're talking about, you know.
They
when the
should be
elevator
prepared.
down, go down, you can push this one up.
they should be
like,
prepared.
Jason, take that, would you?
And Jason will for sure get all of this. So this will all go out to
Right.
them for
And
sure.
Michael, your point's very well taken. And right now, the point to your board is like, we have been working to try to keep it flat, so like, you're welcome.
I mean, and I could always say, at least in Dinah's case, we've done that actually just on our own stuff, trying to keep, in fact, the financial methods that Merck's been doing have been actually being able to actually lower, actually, I think, even though our dollars go up because of the property value, but the actual part, we've been refunding and doing things, so it's because our whole goal is to keep that as low, because our biggest problem in our community is not us. It's our other civic taxing authorities that are at a rate that are, you know, significant. So when people then get their property tax statements, they're like, whoa, and then they think a good chunk of that is coming from us, and that's not the case. So I was talking about that today, that's why
That's another hot one.
Yeah, that's another.
I
know.
So speaking about singing the praises of 287, I don't know if you guys do this in your board meeting, but I have time on the agenda every board meeting to give a 287 report. So every board meeting, I get to share spotlight on success and, you know, the great things happening in the districts. So when this conversation happens, it's typically not a hard one.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you for. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, this is a resolution,
Yep.
so I will ask the clerk to call the roll. No, I will take a.
We gotta make a motion.
I will take a motion.
I would move
Thank
that
you.
the board approves the 27-28 long-term facility plan revenue resolution as presented.
Thank you, Kim. And is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dan. And any further discussion? Okay, now I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Casey. Shannon Andreessen, aye. Michael Birdman.
Aye.
Ann Casey.
Aye.
Dan Ginestra.
Aye.
Kenneth Liss.
Aye.
Leslie Locke.
Aye.
Caroline Long. Michael is not here. Kim Ross.
Aye.
And Richard Zek.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna go on to the FY27 budget assumption.
All right, excellent. Just real quick, Kurt, if you want to drop off,
Thank
you're
you,
welcome
Kurt.
to. This will be exhilarating though, if you want to stay on.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
All right, perfect. Now we'll go into the FY27 budget assumptions. So as you recall, in March, we covered the revised budget for FY26. So tonight, we're going to be moving into FY27's budget. And so we'll be looking at those assumptions as they serve for the foundational roadmap for our planning for next year. This is something that 287 does each year as part of the process, and it brings it forward to the board for approval. You have the full detail in your packets, and I'm not going to walk through every line item tonight unless you want me to. Instead, I'll just highlight the most critical assumptions or newly added assumptions that will impact operations or have a financial impact. So I also like to mention this too. I know I have, and I know it's been mentioned in the past. This process isn't done in a vacuum. It's done in collaboration with many groups. So these assumptions and numbers included aren't guesses. They're built on planning information from our member districts and internal teams to ensure we are aligned with our student needs. And there's just a lot of collaborations with meetings internally, externally, and a lot of time goes into the planning process as we start kicking this off. So it looks like a simple 2 or 3 page document, but there's a lot of history in it and there's a lot of collaboration. So the first thing that's on the top of the document is the member district commitments. So good news, we were not informed that anyone's leaving. I say that kind of jokingly, but it is a huge thing for us because obviously we're here to serve the member districts. And so it's huge when we're doing our planning with staffing and everything else. And so now we can look at the listed assumptions. So the overall assumptions are broken down between the revenues and expenditures that you can see in the document in the board packet. And so we'll start with the revenue assumptions. I'll highlight a few of those. The state funding and weighted pupil units, I always touch on this. Obviously, it impacts us, but not to the degree that it does in your districts. And you'll hear it, you probably already have heard it from your business managers, but a big number of your districts probably highlight as a per pupil funding amount, which is going up by 2.69% or $202 over FY26 amount. And that's the $7,683. The next big thing that we spend quite a bit of time on, and it's crucial for your districts, right? we have to count kids, we have to count kids right, because that's how we lay in our revenue. 287 is similar in a lot of ways, but at the same time different. So we obviously do a lot of ADM planning, just like in your member districts, but as a primary starting point for the revenue. But it is the primary starting point for us for revenue and the expenditure building, right? Just with the tuition billing, where our revenues equal our expenditures. The main difference is that our projected special education ADMs are based on meetings held by the special education leadership with 287 and the special ed leadership within your member districts. And this started back in January and February. And then in internal meetings to kind of determine the numbers that we land on, because this is kind of how we build out staffing. It's our allocations, it's all of that. So these numbers are important because, like I said, these projections build on our staffing numbers. It's obviously a fine line. I always like to point that out to being in regular districts prior. For more traditional districts, it's always a challenge because it's a really fine line, right? Like we're projecting what student counts will be, but that could vary. Needs could change. We're doing this right now, but student needs could change next year, right? And so we want to be really thoughtful with our projections because it could end up in overstaffing. But if we're too conservative, it will end up in understaffing, right? And then we have kind of wait lists, and we have other issues that come about. And so it's not a perfect science, right? We try to go off all the best available information we have at the time, and the teams do a really good job of that. And it's also a challenge to get staff, right? We know we're in a tough, challenging market. And it's a lot harder to grab a staff member in January or February or March when needs come in. So I just mentioned those things because it is a challenge. So our projected total ADMs for next year are projected to be at 575, which is a slight decrease of 33 ADMs from the FY26 projections. But by starting at 575, we're taking a conservative anchor approach, but trying to forecast to limit wait lists to meet the needs of your member districts and the needs of the students. It allows us to build a sustainable budget while ensuring we have that foundational staffing ratios built on the tiered ratio system that was approved by the board back in 2019. And another thing, your business managers probably talk about it a lot too, but ADM versus head count, right? Average daily membership. That doesn't take into account, you can't have 1.5 or 57.5 kids. For us, just as an example, in March, we had an ADM of 537.33, but our head count was 568. So you still need the staffing there to take care of the students, right? And then other things, kind of getting off of the ADM topic, other enrollment things, these are areas that were mentioned in previous years that haven't changed, but the ALC projections, which use historical trend analysis and information from members, and those numbers obviously are worked on with the team and determined that way. Fees and levies to keep costs more predictable, kind of just like we talked about with LTFM. We have predictability in certain areas. So some other things that haven't changed is the core fee remains at the $15.05. And I think Superintendent Dowd, that's been since maybe 2019. And then the ALC fee, the $5 per member district APU, that's staying static. And then the levy dollars for safe schools, LTFM, like we just talked about, lease levy, like we talked about, will be accessed through the member districts. So those are dollars like we talked about, just flow through. And then other revenue streams, just because we talk about it's a challenging time right now, right? Whenever you're, and I know I mentioned it last month, but when you're in a business model where you're getting 2 to 3%, but your costs are higher than that, it's not traditionally a good business model unless you have continuous growing enrollment, right? And even that you're subsidizing for how long, and that's not really a sustainable model. So 287 is always working collaboratively with MDE, and they're always looking at other revenue streams that can offset. So big ones to mention are the compensatory, the online learning aids. We have a ton of grants. We have a person that just solely focuses on grants and helps to be able to offer a lot of the services and staffing that we have. So that's a really big job. I think that was one of the big, like, oh my goodness, when I got here was grants are huge. And grants are different than probably in a lot of your districts. They come with very strict reporting. And as we've always said, a lot of them, whether they're $3,000 or $1.2 million, they have the same reporting and tracking. So that can be a challenge. And then another huge one is the medical assistance funds. That's a big one that we're able to utilize for a lot of different areas that by utilizing these funds, that's taking dollars that aren't flowing to your districts to the tuition bill.
And how many of those revenue streams are looking to be cut under the blue ribbon panel to cut $250 million from special education funding?
Of the ones that we should, I mean, well, there's no proposed recommendation forward. Some things that have been talked about, well, obviously the cross subsidy, which is more of an impact on benefits. And either way, they're saying 250 million from the state, special ed. Don't know yet what that means. There's no recommendation for it. It should be in May.
I'm just saying, because you're talking about your assumptions, I
Yes,
just want to
Yeah.
sort of
Yes.
make sure there's a
blue ribbon is-
caveat there.
Yes, we'll see what, we don't know those assumptions.
Thank you.
Perfect. That's a great question. So now we can look at some of the expenditure assumptions. Again, I won't go through all of these, and obviously some of them tie directly to the revenue things that we just talked about, but general alignment, the expenditure budgets for FY 27 will align with the revenue projections based upon the anticipated ADMs. The tiered ratios, the tiered budgeting and tuition billing rates, which were approved in 2019 that I mentioned, will continue. Strategic alignment, our expenditures will continue to be aligned with the strategic priorities to meet the strategic goals of the district that were talked about earlier in this meeting today. And then facilities and safety, those levy dollars available for safe schools, LTFM, leases will be utilized to ensure students and staff safety and to minimize the impact on member districts' other general fund resources. Personnel and contracts, staff salaries will be budgeted at the estimated FY 27 amounts based on settled contracts or board approved parameters. And then one of the things mentioned on there is the discontinuation of the NICA program. So the operations at North Education Center Academy will be discontinued. So that will be factored into the FY 27 budget. And then I always end with this, the fund balance policy, the FY 27 budget will be developed with keeping in mind the board fund balance policy. So in the event that expenditures exceed revenues due to unpredictable circumstances, just like in your member districts, it's always extremely critical to have a healthy fund balance to be able to offset those. So in closing, I know that was a lot of information that I kind of burned through quickly, but they're all listed in the document and I know a lot of them hadn't changed. We updated with numbers, so it's a little bit repetitive with some new items, but obviously those are the critical components that we utilize to start building that FY 27 budget. And this work has already started to begin. Even before tonight, we're working in behind the scenes. As soon as we got done with FY 26, it was let's get into FY 27. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
I just had one that's probably more. Superintendent Dowd, is that I realize you walk a fine line when you're projecting ADMs in 87, exactly for the reasons you mentioned. You don't want to overstaff, you don't want to understaff. I am wondering, though, given that there was a waiting list this year, that why we're projecting a lower ADM for next year.
Yeah, and I was wondering if you're gonna catch that. One thing when we did it's also around classroom design and staffing. We have a history of getting elementary, middle school early, referrals early, and then towards the end of the school year, we see more high school, middle school, high school referrals. Those didn't come in this year, so we were saving those classrooms where the wait was in the elementary. So we've had 2 years of this trend now. So even though you see a reduction, there was a significant adjustment in the amount of classrooms for elementary, so we adjusted, but we are not seeing that high school enrollment that we did prior. And so that's where the reduction is.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Do you think that given all the events that took place this school year and the ramifications of the mental health and the other kind of issues for certain segments of the population that were affected by the operation of ICE, do you think that that might not necessarily be the case as you've seen this last 2 years going into next year? That I know certainly in our district, we're looking at what we're trying to do this summer to try to help with the slide that happened with those students who were not in school. I don't know of what percentage of students in neighboring districts and member districts have felt that, but what we've been talking about is that we don't see this as something that's going to be back to normal once you get through the summer. But as we go into school year 27, there will be a lingering effect of that. And what are we doing resource wise to account for that? So I just was just curious. if
Yeah,
you
I
thought
think
about
we
that at
talked
all.
about it regarding, is it credit recovery need or a special ed Fed 4?
Yeah,
They're different.
yeah,
And so when we look at what we are, like for high school right now, we're down around 60 students. And so we're factoring in that it's not, we're not taking away 60 slots, but around half of that.
got it. Okay.
Okay. All right, this is an action item. So is there a motion to approve the FY 27 budget assumption as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Michael, is there a second? Second by Kim. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye and the assumptions are approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we are up to the board business section of our agenda. AMSD is meeting tomorrow and the Day of the Capitol is on Monday, so lots of AMSD happening in the next few days, and the April newsletter is attached to the board book. We have Get on the Bus happening, is that next week already? Next week?
Yes, ma'am, the
On
14th.
Tuesday.
Yes.
The 14th, and that will be hosted by Itinerant Services, and we will not be going on a bus. We will be staying here at the DSC, so we'll just have to pretend that we're on the bus, but that the Itinerant Services team always does an amazing job kind of showing off what they do, even though we're all in one space instead of in the million places where they do it around our member districts. So please make sure to sign up for that if you were able, and the sign up will be going out in the board update for both the Get on the Bus and for the 2209 lunch meeting, which is I think the following week. I don't have any other announcements on my end. Thank you, Juanine, as always, for putting together my reminders list. Okay, once we're on the table, anyone have anything to share? Yeah.
Well, as I'm sure some of you are aware, Wayzata Schools is going to a referendum on Tuesday. The stakes I think are pretty high. It's our ability to continue meeting growing enrollment while providing for those students already enrolled. It's really been an incredible campaign, and I'm so grateful to everyone who's made it possible. We have a fantastic communications team, a fantastic yes committee. And they really brought this. People are, I think, aware of the cost of the stuff you go through. I think, someone told me the other day that something like 2,000 doors in our community have been knocked. There's a goal to hopefully, 800, 900. So, thank you to everyone who's put in the legwork. It's really tiring. There is early voting tomorrow. Election day is 14. It's not a conventional election because it's not the Secretary of State's website you'll go on to see the results. Wayzata Schools will have its own page where you can see the results there, probably, around 9:30. Interesting fact about elections in Minnesota, results refresh on the 7th. So 9/17, 9/27, it's always on a 7. So I'm sure you'll hopefully join me sitting there with some apprehension over what the final measure passage rate will be. It's 3 items on the ballot: renewal of the tech levy, capital projects, Peace build 2 new schools, add on to the high school, along with internal improvements across our community. And then we have a third item of a swimming pool addition to the high school to support the many, many options and opportunities that can provide. So vote,
Was that?
vote.
Just wanted to let everyone know, if you aren't already aware, that the Hopkins School Board, with the help of MSBA's executive search team, announced our first tier of interviews for superintendent, and the list is out. You can Google it. I'm sure you'll find it. And we will be conducting those first round of interviews on Monday. So I will be missing, I think, the day at the Capitol for the first time in over a decade. So that will be strange, but I will be doing important work at the board table, getting down to our finalists. So that's the big news from Hopkins. Have fun at the Capitol.
I just have a curiosity question because I've tried to keep up with it, but I was gone this past week. Is there been movement on any key bills at the legislature relating to funding for education? I know the MSBA put out this massive trying to get behind the elimination of the 250 cuts to special ed, and there's a few other things, but like I haven't heard much. And so as we get prepared for Monday, I just wasn't sure if anyone had any insight or whatever is about what's going on. And
On Tuesday, the House and Finance Committee will hear the bill for the elimination of the 200 for the commission. And then just an MDE status of special ed expenditures.
Are you hopeful? I hope they understand how
What's
devastating this will be for us.
What's the bill number?
I looked at the House file for you.
or maybe my ask would be if there's anything specific from 287 standpoint that we want to add to make sure for our advocacy on Monday. If there's anything that you want to send on the update for the week or whatever.
Anyone else planning to be there on
Be there,
Monday?
yeah.
I will be there.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All of you, Dinah will be there.
I'll put our legislative platform and then highlight some things that we've been really focusing on.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we, Hopkins has been hitting hard the increasing the safe school levy from $36 per pupil to $100 per pupil. So that would be something you want to hit. We have heard back from our legislators that there is possibility that could go through this year. So hit that hard with all of your reps and senators. Because I mean, money is money, right?
Thank you. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
By Shannon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair votes aye and we are adjourned at 8:52. Oh, did you want to plug in?
I didn't have to, I was going to, but it doesn't matter. Just next board meeting.